The moment Emily Hart's fist connected with the armed robber's jaw, Adrian Vale knew his entire world was about to change. 3 masked men, dozens of terrified customers, and one shy waitress who moved like a shadow made of steel. This is the story of how a billionaire restaurant owner discovered that the quiet woman serving his tables was hiding secrets that could destroy them both, and how a single act of violence in his dining room sparked an obsession that would cost him everything he'd built. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why some secrets are worth dying for. Hit that like button, and let me tell you about the night Adrian Vale stopped being invincible. Adrian Vale didn't believe in coincidences, miracles, or love at first sight. At 32, he'd learned that life operated on patterns. Predictable, controllable patterns that could be managed with enough money, precision, and cold calculation. His restaurant, Aurelius, occupied the corner of 5th Avenue and 58th Street like a crown jewel, 3 Michelin stars glittering in the Manhattan skyline. Politicians whispered deals over his Dover soul. Celebrities proposed in his private rooms, and Adrian controlled every single detail, from the thread count of the napkins to the exact temperature of the wine cellar. Control was everything. It was the only thing that had kept him standing after Sarah died. That Thursday night in October, Adrian arrived at Aurelius at 7:15, exactly as he did every Thursday. His driver pulled the Mercedes to the curb, and Adrian stepped onto the sidewalk in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The autumn air bit at his face, sharp and clean. He liked it, liked the clarity. "Evening, Mr. Vale," the doorman said, pulling open the brass-handled door. Adrian nodded but didn't speak. He never did. Small talk was a waste of breath. Inside, the restaurant hummed with the particular energy of expensive people eating expensive food. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white tablecloths. The scent of truffle and butter hung in the air. A pianist played something soft and forgettable in the corner. Everything was exactly as it should be. Adrian's son Marcus was at home with the nanny. 8 years old, dark-haired, quiet in the way that worried Adrian more than he'd admit. The boy spent too much time alone, too much time in his own head. But Adrian didn't know how to fix that. He knew business. He knew money. He knew how to turn a failing restaurant into an empire. He didn't know how to fill the hole Sarah had left. So he worked. And he made sure Marcus had everything money could buy, even if he couldn't give him the one thing that mattered. Adrian moved through the dining room with the manager, Richard, a thin man with nervous hands who'd been with Aurelius since the beginning. They walked the floor together, Adrian's eyes cataloging every detail. A water glass refilled too slowly at table 6. A waiter's tie slightly crooked. The angle of a fork on table 12, just half an inch off center. "Table 9 needs attention," Adrian said quietly. Richard followed his gaze. "Yes, sir. I'll handle it." But Adrian had already stopped listening. His attention had snagged on something else entirely. A waitress. She was new, or at least he hadn't noticed her before, which was the same thing. She moved between tables with a kind of fluid economy that most of his staff never mastered. No wasted motion, no unnecessary smiles. She refilled a wine glass without being asked, adjusted a napkin that had slipped, cleared a plate the instant the guest set down their fork. She was maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a simple twist. Her uniform fit properly. Black dress, white apron, everything crisp and professional. But it was her face that caught him, or rather, the way she didn't use it. She kept her eyes down, her expression neutral, her whole presence designed to be invisible. Most waitstaff performed. They smiled too much, laughed too loud, angled for tips with forced charm. This woman did the opposite. She served with the precision of someone who wanted to be forgotten the moment she left the table. Adrian watched her navigate a difficult guest at table 7, a banking executive who was notorious for sending food back. The man was gesturing, his voice rising. The waitress stood perfectly still, hands folded, listening. She didn't flinch, didn't interrupt. When he finished, she nodded once, said something Adrian couldn't hear, and walked away. The executive's wife looked relieved. The man himself seemed deflated, like she'd pulled some invisible pin from his anger. "Who is that?" Adrian asked. Richard glanced over. "Emily Hart. She started about 6 weeks ago. Excellent worker. Punctual, professional, never any complaints." "Background?" References from Chicago, previous hospitality experience, nothing remarkable. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Everything about her was remarkable. The way she moved, the way she made herself small, the way she just dismantled that guest's tantrum without breaking a sweat. He filed the information away and continued his inspection. But he kept noticing her, kept watching the way she slipped between tables like water, never quite touching anyone, never quite being seen. She spoke multiple languages. He heard her switch seamlessly from English to French to what sounded like Italian, matching whatever the guest needed. Her pronunciation was perfect, not the kind of thing you learned from a phrase book. By 8:30, the dinner rush had peaked. Adrian stood near the kitchen, reviewing the night's reservations with Richard, when the front door opened and 3 men walked in. They wore black jackets, jeans, work boots. Wrong clothes, wrong energy, wrong everything. Adrian's spine went rigid. The hostess approached them with a professional smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. Do you have a reservation?" The first man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, pulled a gun from his jacket. "Everybody on the fucking floor. Now!" For a single, crystalline second, the restaurant froze. The pianist's hands hovered over the keys. A woman's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. Adrian's mind raced through possibilities, calculations, exits. Then the screaming started. Guests dropped to the floor, some crawling under tables, some covering their heads with their hands. The second robber, shorter, nervous, sweating through his shirt, waved his gun at the staff. "Wallets! Jewelry! Phones! Move!" The third man, lean and cold-eyed, headed straight for the register. Adrian's first thought was Marcus. If something happened to him, Marcus would be alone. Truly alone. No mother, no father. Just money and silence. His second thought was that someone was going to die if this went wrong, and he couldn't let that happen. He stayed standing, hands visible, making himself the calmest thing in the room. "There's no need for violence," Adrian said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We'll cooperate." The man with the scar swung the gun toward him. "I said on the floor." "I own this restaurant," Adrian said evenly. "If you want money, I can get it for you. No one needs to get hurt." Richard was on the floor, hands over his head, whispering something that might have been a prayer. The guests were sobbing, shaking, pressed flat against Italian marble that cost $700 per square foot. Adrian's entire empire, reduced to this. The scarred man stepped closer. "You think you're special? You think your money makes you—" He didn't finish the sentence, because Emily Hart was suddenly there. Adrian didn't see her move. One second she was by table 9, frozen like everyone else. The next, she was behind the gunman, her hand locking around his wrist in a grip that made his fingers spasm open. The gun hit the floor. She swept his legs out from under him with a move so fast Adrian's brain couldn't process it. The man went down hard, his head cracking against the floor. Before the others could react, Emily had already pivoted toward the second robber. He tried to aim at her, tried and failed. She ducked under his arm, drove her elbow into his solar plexus, and used his own momentum to slam him face first into the hostess stand. His gun clattered away. He collapsed, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The third man raised his weapon, but his hands were shaking. Don't fucking move!" Emily stopped, held perfectly still. Her breathing hadn't changed. Her expression was calm, almost blank. She looked like she was deciding whether to pick up a dropped fork or let it lie. "Put the gun down," she said quietly. "This is over." The man's finger tightened on the trigger. Adrian moved without thinking, stepping between them. "Don't." It was the stupidest thing he'd ever done. Worse than gambling everything on his first restaurant. Worse than thinking he could outrun grief. He just put himself between a trained fighter and an armed, terrified criminal, and he had no idea what happened next. Emily's eyes met his for the first time. They were gray, storm-colored, and completely unreadable. "Mr. Vale," she said softly. "Move." "No." The third robber was backing toward the door now, gun still raised, panic bleeding through every movement. "I'll shoot! I swear to God, I'll—" "You won't," Emily said. Not a threat, a statement of fact. And somehow, impossibly, he believed her. The man ran. The door slammed behind him. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Adrian turned to look at the waitress who'd just dismantled 3 armed men in under 30 seconds. She was adjusting her apron. I apologize for the tables, Emily said, glancing at the overturned chairs, the shattered wine glasses. I'll clean this up right away. Then she walked toward the kitchen like nothing had happened. The police arrived 8 minutes later. NYPD flooded Aurelius with questions, clipboards, and the kind of bureaucratic efficiency that made Adrian want to set something on fire. The 2 conscious robbers were cuffed and dragged out. The third, still unconscious, was loaded onto a stretcher. Detective Maria Reyes took Adrian's statement in his office upstairs, a minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of exhaustion that came from seeing too much. "Walk me through it again," she said, pen poised over her notepad. 3 men entered. They had guns. They threatened the guests. Miss Hart disarmed them. Reyes looked up. "Miss Hart, the waitress." "Yes." "And you're telling me this waitress, Emily Hart, age 30, employed for 6 weeks, took down 3 armed robbers by herself?" "I'm telling you what I saw." Reyes tapped her pen against the notepad. "What's her background? Military? Police?" "I don't know." "You don't know." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I'll be conducting a more thorough review of her employment records." "You do that." Reyes stood, tucking her notepad away. "In the meantime, we're going to need to talk to her. Where is she?" Adrian glanced toward the door. "Downstairs. She insisted on finishing her shift." Reyes stared at him. "She what?" "She said the guests were upset and someone needed to maintain order." The detective shook her head, muttering something Adrian didn't catch. Probably something about rich people and their crazy staff. Downstairs, Emily was doing exactly what she'd said. The dining room had been cleared of guests, but she was resetting tables, replacing broken glasses, sweeping up shards of crystal like this was any other closing shift. Her movements were methodical, precise. No hurry, no drama. Adrian watched from the mezzanine, his mind turning over the problem of her like a Rubik's Cube that didn't have a solution. Reyes approached Emily carefully, the way someone might approach a stray dog that could either lick your hand or take off your fingers. "Miss Hart, I'm Detective Reyes. I need to ask you some questions." Emily set down the tray she was carrying. "Of course." "You want to tell me where you learned to fight like that?" "Self-defense classes." "Uh-huh. What kind of self-defense classes teach you to disarm 3 gunmen in under a minute?" Emily's expression didn't change. "I had a good instructor." "Name?" "I don't remember. It was years ago." Reyes wasn't buying it. Adrian could see the detective's frustration building, the way her shoulders tensed, but Emily just stood there, polite and blank as a wall. "Listen," Reyes said, her voice softening slightly. "You did an incredibly brave thing tonight. Maybe incredibly stupid, but brave. You saved lives. I just need to understand who you are and what you're capable of." "I'm a waitress," Emily said simply. "I reacted, that's all." It was the most obvious lie Adrian had ever heard, and yet delivered with such calm certainty that it almost sounded true. Reyes sighed. "Okay, fine. We'll be in touch." She handed Emily a card. "If you remember anything else about those self-defense classes, give me a call." Emily took the card and slipped it into her apron pocket without looking at it. When Reyes left, the restaurant fell into an uneasy quiet. The remaining staff were cleaning up, whispering to each other, casting nervous glances at Emily. Richard was handling the paperwork with insurance. Adrian stood at the top of the stairs, watching the waitress who'd just saved his life continue working like she hadn't shattered every assumption he'd ever made. Finally, he walked down. "Miss Hart." She turned. Up close, he could see the details he'd missed before. A small scar above her left eyebrow, barely visible. Calloused hands that didn't match the rest of her appearance. Eyes that didn't quite meet his, but somehow still saw everything. "Mr. Vale." "I think," Adrian said slowly, "we should talk." "About?" "About whatever the hell just happened." Emily folded her hands in front of her. 3 men attempted to rob your restaurant. I stopped them. You should improve your security. You're not a waitress." "I serve tables. I believe that makes me a waitress." Adrian felt something dangerous stir in his chest. Irritation, yes, but also fascination, curiosity. The same feeling he got when he found a new business opportunity that everyone else had overlooked. "Who are you?" he asked. For the first time, something flickered in her expression. Not fear, exactly. More like the recognition that a door she'd kept closed was being tested. "Someone who needs this job," she said quietly. "If you're going to fire me, please just do it now." "Fire you? You just saved my life." "I broke furniture. I caused a scene. You stopped 3 armed men from robbing me and possibly killing my guests. If anything, I should be giving you a raise." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "I don't want a raise." "Then what do you want?" She hesitated. The silence stretched between them, fragile and electric. "To be left alone," she said finally. "To do my job. To not be noticed." Adrian studied her. Every instinct he'd honed over a decade of building an empire was screaming that this woman was a problem, a variable he couldn't control, a mystery he shouldn't touch. He ignored every single one of them. "You speak 4 languages," he said. "You have training that most Special Forces soldiers would envy. You move through this dining room like you've been doing it your entire life, and yet your references say you worked in a Chicago diner before this. Are you calling me a liar, Mr. Vale? I'm saying your resume doesn't match your skill set." Emily's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My resume got me hired. My skill set kept your guests alive. If those 2 things don't align to your satisfaction, I'll be gone by morning." She turned to walk away. "Wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. Adrian took a step closer. "I'm not firing you. I'm trying to understand you." "Why?" "Because I don't like mysteries in my restaurant." "Then you're going to be disappointed." Emily glanced back at him, and for just a second, the mask slipped. He saw exhaustion there, loneliness, something that looked like grief. "I'm very good at staying mysterious, Mr. Vale. It's how I've stayed alive." She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the kitchen, leaving Adrian standing in the middle of his 3 Michelin-star restaurant with more questions than he'd ever had in his life. Adrian didn't go home that night. He sat in his office, staring at Emily Hart's employment file. It was thin. Too thin. References from a diner in Chicago that, when he called, confirmed she'd worked there for 8 months. Reliable, quiet, kept to herself. Before that, a hotel in Denver. Before that, a gap of 2 years. He pulled up background check databases, ran her social security number, searched for any trace of her online. Nothing. No social media. No digital footprint. No photos. No posts. No trace of a life lived in the 21st century. Emily Hart existed on paper, but barely. Like someone who'd learned how to be invisible and practiced until it became instinct. Adrian leaned back in his chair, watching the city lights flicker below. He thought about the way she'd moved, the precision, the lack of hesitation. You didn't learn that in a self-defense class at the local YMCA. You learned that when your life depended on it. His phone buzzed. A text from the nanny. "Marcus is asking about you. He had a nightmare." Guilt stabbed through him, sharp and familiar. He should be home. Should be the one comforting his son, not paying someone else to do it. But instead, he was here, obsessing over a waitress who clearly didn't want to be found. Adrian typed a response. "Tell him I'll be home soon. Read him the book about the dragons." He put the phone down and stared at Emily's file again. There was a story here, a reason she'd learned to fight like a weapon, a reason she hid behind silence and lowered eyes. And Adrian Vale, for all his control and precision, had never been good at leaving mysteries unsolved. The next morning, Emily arrived at Aurelius at exactly 10 a.m., the same as always. The restaurant didn't open until 5, but the prep work started early. She changed into her uniform in the staff room, tied her hair back, and stepped into the kitchen. The other waitstaff went quiet when she entered. Carlos, one of the line cooks, broke the silence. "Jesus, Emily, you're a goddamn superhero." "I'm really not," she said, heading for the coffee machine. "Are you kidding? You took down 3 guys with guns. That's some John Wick shit." It was reflex, nothing more. But Carlos wasn't letting it go. Neither were the others. They crowded around her, asking questions, telling her what they'd seen, exaggerating the details until the story sounded like something from a movie. Emily listened with the same polite blankness she always wore, drinking her coffee, waiting for the attention to fade. It didn't. Richard appeared in the doorway. "Miss Hart, Mr. Vale wants to see you." The room went silent again. Emily set down her coffee cup. "Of course." She followed Richard upstairs, her heart beating just slightly faster than normal. This was it. He'd looked into her background, found the gaps, decided she was too much of a risk. She'd known this job wouldn't last. They never did. Adrian was standing by the window when she entered, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city. He didn't turn around. "Close the door," he said. Emily did. "I ran your background check last night," Adrian continued, still not looking at her. "You want to know what I found?" "I'm sure you're going to tell me." "Nothing." He turned now, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "Absolutely nothing. You're a ghost." Emily kept her expression neutral. "I value my privacy." "Privacy is one thing. This is something else." "Then fire me." "Why do you keep saying that?" Adrian stepped closer, frustration bleeding into his voice. "You saved my life. You saved my guess. You're the best waitress I've ever employed. Why would I fire you?" "Because I make you uncomfortable." The words hung in the air between them. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Yes, you do." "Then let me go." "No." Emily blinked. "No?" "I don't run from things that make me uncomfortable, Miss Hart. I figure them out." He crossed his arms. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep working here. You're going to keep doing whatever it is you do. And I'm going to keep watching until I understand what you're running from. You have no right. I have every right. This is my restaurant, my business, my responsibility." Adrian's voice dropped lower, something almost dangerous creeping into it. "And if someone's coming for you, I need to know. Because next time, it might not be three idiots with guns. It might be someone who actually knows what they're doing." Emily's breath caught. He'd seen more than she realized, understood more than she'd given him credit for. "No one's coming for me," she said quietly. "You're lying. You don't know that. I know when someone's scared, and you're terrified." Adrian moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and clean. "What are you running from?" Emily looked up at him, this man in his tailored suit and his perfect restaurant and his billion-dollar empire, and felt the wall she'd built start to crack. "Everything," she whispered. Then she turned and walked out before he could see her hand shake. Adrian started showing up at the restaurant every night after that. He told himself it was routine inspection, told himself he needed to keep a closer eye on operations after the robbery, told himself a lot of things that didn't quite add up to truth. The truth was simpler and more complicated. He couldn't stop watching Emily Hart. She moved through the dining room like she was dancing with invisible partners, anticipating needs before guests knew they had them. A businessman's water refilled the moment his glass hit half empty. A woman's dropped napkin replaced before she could even reach for it. A child's spilled juice cleaned up with such speed and discretion that the parents barely noticed. But it was more than efficiency. Adrian started seeing the layers beneath the performance, the way Emily positioned herself near exits. Always. Every single shift, she made sure she had a clear line to at least 2 ways out. The way she flinched, just barely, almost invisibly, when men raised their voices. The way she wore long sleeves even on warm nights, and how those sleeves sometimes rode up to reveal what looked like old scars on her forearms. The way she never, ever let anyone touch her. If a guest tried to shake her hand, she'd already moved. If another waiter brushed past her, she'd sidestep with uncanny precision. Adrian watched it all, cataloging details, building a picture he didn't fully understand. He also watched her handle difficult guests with a skill that bordered on therapeutic. A drunk hedge fund manager who got aggressive over his steak. Emily diffused him with 3 sentences and a glass of water. An influencer who tried to get comp tickets by threatening a bad review? Emily smiled politely and somehow made the woman apologize for her behavior. "How does she do that?" Adrian asked Richard one night, watching Emily navigate yet another impossible situation. Richard shook his head. "I have no idea. It's like she can see what people need before they know it themselves. Or she's had practice reading threats." Richard glanced at him. "You think she's in some kind of trouble?" "I think," Adrian said slowly, "that Emily Hart is the most dangerous person in this building. And I think she's trying very hard to make us forget that. On a Wednesday night in early November, Adrian made a decision that would change everything. He stayed late after closing. The staff had gone home, the kitchen was clean, the dining room was dark and silent. And Emily was still there, wiping down tables that didn't need wiping, organizing silverware that was already organized, killing time, avoiding something. Adrian walked down from his office, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. "You don't have to stay," he said. Emily didn't look up. "I prefer to make sure everything's perfect. It's always perfect. Then I'm doing my job." Adrian pulled out a chair and sat down at the table she was cleaning. Emily's hands paused for just a second, then continued working. "My wife died 3 years ago," Adrian said quietly. That got her attention. Emily straightened, her eyes finally meeting his. "I'm sorry," she said. "Cancer. Ovarian. By the time they found it, it was already stage 4. Adrian stared at the empty chair across from him. "She lasted 8 months, fought the whole time, but it wasn't enough." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked me once what I wanted, and I didn't have an answer." He looked up at her. "I want to understand why someone as capable as you is hiding behind a waitress uniform. I want to know what you're running from, and I want to help." Emily's expression shuddered. "You can't help me." "Why not?" "Because some problems can't be solved with money, Mr. Vale. Call me Adrian." "No." "Why not?" "Because that would make us friends, and we're not friends." "What are we then?" Emily set down her cloth and met his gaze directly. For the first time since they'd met, she didn't hide, didn't look away, didn't pretend. "You're a lonely widower trying to fill the empty spaces in your life with puzzles you can solve," she said. "And I'm a woman who made a mistake thinking I could stay in one place long enough to catch my breath." The words hit harder than they should have. "That's not fair," Adrian said. "No, it's not." Emily picked up her cloth again. "But it's true. You don't know anything about me. I know you've been watching me for weeks. I know you run background checks on your employees. I know you think if you can just figure out my story, you'll feel less alone." Her voice was gentle, but the truth in it cut deep. "And I know that even if I told you everything, it wouldn't fix what you're looking for." Adrian stood up slowly. "You're wrong." "Am I?" "I'm not trying to fix myself, Emily. I'm trying to make sure you don't get hurt." Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Adrian admitted. "But I do." They stood there in the empty restaurant, surrounded by perfect tables and crystal glasses and all the trappings of wealth that suddenly felt meaningless. "I can't stay here much longer," Emily said finally. "I've already stayed too long." "How long is too long?" 6 months. Maybe 8 if I'm careful. After that, people start remembering, start asking questions, start finding answers I can't afford to give. "So you just disappear? Start over somewhere new?" "Yes." "That's not living. That's surviving." Emily smiled, but there was no happiness in it. "Sometimes survival is all you get." Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she deserved more, that she could trust him, that he could protect her from whatever she was running from. But he'd learned a long time ago that you couldn't force people to accept help they didn't want. "If you decide to stay," he said carefully, "I'll make sure you're safe." "You can't promise that. Watch me." Emily looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable passing through her eyes. Then she picked up her things and walked toward the door. "Emily?" Adrian called after her. She stopped but didn't turn around. "What's your real name?" The silence stretched so long he thought she wasn't going to answer. "Emily," she said finally. "That part's real." Then she was gone, leaving Adrian alone in the dark. Adrian didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study at home, a glass of scotch growing warm in his hand, staring at the photograph on his desk. Sarah smiled back at him from some beach in Greece, her hair wild in the wind, her eyes bright with a kind of joy he'd forgotten existed. Marcus had been 4 then. Happy, unaware that his mother had less than a year left. The house was too quiet. It was always too quiet. He thought about Emily's words. "You're a lonely widower trying to fill the empty spaces in your life with puzzles you can solve." She'd been right, of course, painfully right, but knowing the diagnosis didn't make the disease any easier to live with. His phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Press is calling about the robbery. How do you want to handle it? Adrian typed back. Standard statement. No employee names. Security has been upgraded. Business as usual. Another buzz. What about Emily? They're asking about her. She doesn't exist in the story. Make sure of it. He set the phone down and finished his scotch. Whatever Emily was running from, the last thing she needed was her face plastered across the tabloids as the hero waitress of Fifth Avenue. Upstairs, Marcus was asleep. Adrian checked on him the way he did every night, quietly opening the door, watching his son's chest rise and fall in the dim glow of the nightlight. The boy looked so much like Sarah it hurt. Same dark hair, same delicate features, same tendency to disappear inside himself when the world got too loud. Adrian had tried. After Sarah died, he'd tried to be both parents, to fill both roles. But he was failing. He could see it in the way Marcus went silent at dinner, the way the boy preferred books to conversation, the way he flinched from physical affection like it was something dangerous. He was turning into Adrian, and that terrified him more than anything. The next morning, Adrian made a decision. He would back off. Emily had made herself clear. She didn't want help, didn't want attention, didn't want whatever complicated thing was building between them. He would respect that. He would go back to running his business, raising his son, living the carefully controlled life he'd built. That decision lasted exactly 4 days. On Monday afternoon, Adrian was in a meeting with his accountant when his phone rang. Richard's name flashed on the screen. Adrian ignored it. Richard called again. Then again. Adrian excused himself and answered. This better be important. It's Emily, Richard said, his voice tight. She collapsed during the lunch shift. Ambulance just took her to Mount Sinai. Adrian's blood went cold. What happened? I don't know. She was carrying a tray, and she just went down, hit the floor hard. Is she conscious? She was when they loaded her. But Adrian, she was fighting them, trying to refuse treatment. They had to basically force her into the ambulance. Of course she was fighting. Emily Hart didn't trust hospitals any more than she trusted people. Adrian grabbed his coat. I'm on my way. Mount Sinai's emergency room was the particular kind of chaos that money couldn't fix. Crying children, bleeding teenagers, elderly patients parked in hallways on gurneys because there weren't enough rooms. Adrian hated hospitals, had spent too many months in them watching Sarah disappear piece by piece. He found Emily in a curtained-off section, sitting upright on a bed, arguing with a nurse. I'm fine, Emily was saying. It was just low blood sugar. I need to get back to work. Your blood pressure is 90/60, the nurse said firmly. You're not going anywhere until the doctor clears you. I don't need a doctor. I need... Emily stopped mid-sentence when she saw Adrian. Something flickered across her face. Embarrassment, maybe. Or anger. What are you doing here? Making sure you're alive. I'm alive. You can leave. The nurse glanced between them, clearly trying to figure out the dynamic. Are you family? No, Emily said quickly. Yes, Adrian said at the same time. The nurse raised an eyebrow. I'll give you 2 a minute. She slipped through the curtain, leaving them alone. Emily swung her legs off the bed, reaching for her shoes. You shouldn't be here. You collapsed at my restaurant. That makes it my business. I'm fine. You're not fine. When's the last time you ate? Emily didn't answer, which was answer enough. Adrian felt something snap inside him. Not anger, exactly. More like frustration mixed with fear, mixed with something he didn't want to name. You're going to kill yourself like this. That's dramatic. Is it? You work 60-hour weeks. You don't eat, you don't sleep. You're running yourself into the ground. And for what? For survival, Emily said quietly, finally looking at him. Which you wouldn't understand. Try me. No. Why not? Because the moment I tell you anything real, you'll either try to fix it or you'll run. And I don't want either of those things. Adrian sat down in the plastic chair beside her bed. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. I mean it. Emily studied him for a long moment, her gray eyes searching for something he couldn't name. Whatever she found must have surprised her because her shoulders dropped slightly, some of the defensive tension draining away. I can't afford this, she said finally, gesturing at the hospital room. The ambulance, the tests. Whatever they're going to charge me, I don't have insurance. I'll take care of it. No. Emily, I said no. Her voice was sharp now, the walls going back up. I don't take charity. It's not charity. You were injured at my restaurant. That makes it workers' comp. I wasn't injured. I was stupid. When's the last time you ate? Adrian asked again. Emily's jaw tightened. Yesterday. Breakfast. It's Monday afternoon. I've been busy. You've been starving yourself. I've been rationing. There's a difference. The words hit Adrian like a physical blow. Rationing. She was rationing food. Working at one of the most expensive restaurants in Manhattan, surrounded by $100 steaks and $1,000 wine bottles. And she was rationing food. How much do I pay you? Adrian asked slowly. Minimum wage plus tips. How much in tips? Emily hesitated. Not much. People don't notice me. That's the point. You make yourself invisible so you don't get tipped. I make myself safe. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, trying to process this, trying to understand how someone who could disarm 3 gunmen was living paycheck to paycheck, skipping meals, collapsing from malnutrition. This stops now, he said. Excuse me? You're getting a raise, effective immediately, salary, not hourly, with benefits, including health insurance. I don't care what you want, Adrian said, his voice harder than he intended. You work for me. You collapsed at my restaurant. That's on me. So you're going to accept the raise, you're going to accept the insurance, and you're going to start eating regular meals, non-negotiable. Emily stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Why do you care? I already told you, I don't know, but I do. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. The curtain pulled back. A doctor stepped in, young, tired, with the kind of perpetual caffeine tremor that came from too many double shifts. Miss Hart, your labs came back. You're severely dehydrated and malnourished. I want to keep you overnight for observation and IV fluids. No, Emily said immediately. It's not a request. I'm leaving. Now. Emily stood up, swaying slightly. Adrian caught her elbow. She jerked away from his touch like it burned. Don't. Then sit down before you fall down. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. Adrian could see the way she was gripping the bed rail, the white knuckles, the tremor in her legs. Emily, he said quietly, please, just stay. Let them help you. I can't. Why not? She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw something raw and terrified in her eyes. Because hospitals keep records, she whispered, and records can be found. Understanding crashed over Adrian like cold water. She wasn't just running from something. She was running from someone. Someone who had the resources to track her. Someone she was terrified enough of that she'd rather risk her health than leave a paper trail. The doctor was looking between them, confused and concerned. Miss Hart, I really think I'll take care of her, Adrian said. She'll have private medical care, round-the-clock monitoring, whatever she needs. Sir, I don't think you understand the severity. I understand perfectly. Adrian pulled out his wallet, extracted a business card. Call this number. They'll arrange everything. But she's not staying here. Emily was shaking her head. Adrian, no, I can't let you. You don't have a choice. He looked at the doctor. Get her discharge papers ready. I'll have a private physician meet us at my residence within the hour. He made the calls in the hallway while Emily signed the AMA forms. His personal doctor, a discreet man who treated Sarah and didn't ask unnecessary questions. A medical supply company that could deliver IV equipment. His driver, to bring the car around. By the time he came back, Emily was dressed and sitting on the edge of the bed, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I can't go to your house, she said. You're not going to my house. You're going to the guest suite in my building. Separate entrance, separate space. You'll have privacy. Adrian, do you have a better option? She didn't answer. Then let's go. The ride to Adrian's building was silent. Emily stared out the window, her reflection ghost pale against the glass. Adrian made more calls. To Richard, telling him Emily would be out for a few days. To his lawyer, setting up the salary increase and benefits package. To Marcus's nanny, letting her know he'd be home late. His building was on the Upper East Side, one of those pre-war towers that whispered old money and older secrets. The doorman greeted Adrian by name, didn't blink at the pale woman beside him. The elevator rode smooth and silent to the 12th floor. The guest suite was technically part of Adrian's penthouse, but it had its own entrance, its own key, its own small kitchen and bathroom. Sarah had used it as a studio before she got sick. Now it was just empty space, waiting. Emily walked in slowly, taking in the cream-colored walls, the expensive furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. "This is too much," she said. "It's temporary, until you're back on your feet." "I can't afford—" "You're not paying rent. Consider it part of your employment package." Emily turned to face him. "Why are you doing this?" Adrian didn't have a good answer, or rather, he had too many answers, none of which made sense even to himself. Because she'd saved his life, because she reminded him what it felt like to be curious about something other than profit margins. Because when he looked at her, he saw someone fighting as hard to survive as Sarah had fought to live, and he hadn't been able to save Sarah, but maybe he could help this broken, dangerous woman who'd stumbled into his restaurant. "Because you need help," he said simply, "and I have the resources to provide it." That's not a reason. It's the only one you're getting. Dr. Chen arrived 20 minutes later with a medical bag and the kind of professional discretion that cost extra. He examined Emily, set up an IV, drew blood for private labs, and prescribed rest, nutrition, and no stress. "Good luck with that last one," Emily muttered after he left. Adrian almost smiled. "I'll have meals delivered. 3 a day. You'll eat them." "You can't make me. Watch me. This is ridiculous. This is happening." Adrian headed for the door, then paused. "Get some rest, Emily. We'll talk when you're stronger." "About what?" "About who you're running from, and what we're going to do about it." "There's no we," Emily said. "This is my problem. Not anymore." He left before she could argue, but he could feel her eyes on his back, could sense the war happening inside her, the part that wanted to trust him fighting the part that knew better. Adrian understood that war. He'd been fighting his own version of it since the moment Emily Hart had disarmed 3 gunmen and apologized for the broken furniture. Over the next 3 days, Adrian found himself in a strange new routine. He'd wake up at 5, check his phone for messages from Dr. Chen about Emily's condition. Go to the gym, shower, have breakfast with Marcus, or try to anyway. The boy barely spoke, just pushed eggs around his plate and stared at his book. "How's school?" Adrian would ask. "Fine," Marcus would say. "Any tests coming up?" "No." "Friends giving you trouble?" "No." It was like talking to a mirror that only reflected the emptiness back. Then Adrian would go to Aurelius, spend the day managing the business, dealing with suppliers, reviewing menus, handling the 1,000 small emergencies that came with running a 3 Michelin-star restaurant. And every few hours, he'd check his phone for updates on Emily. Eating better. Still resistant to conversation. That was from the nutritionist he'd hired. Vitals improving. Patient is difficult. From Dr. Chen. She asked me to leave. Twice. From the nurse. Adrian smiled at that last one. Even flat on her back and malnourished, Emily Hart was fighting. On the 3rd evening, he brought Marcus with him when he went to check on her. The boy needed to get out of the apartment, and Adrian needed a buffer. The intensity between him and Emily was getting dangerous, and he knew it. Marcus was quiet in the elevator, clutching a book about dragons. He'd been reading it for weeks, the same story over and over. Adrian wondered if that was normal for 8-year-olds, or if it was another sign that his son was retreating further into himself. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked. "To visit someone who works for me. She's been sick." "Is she dying?" The question hit Adrian like a fist. "No, she's getting better." "Mom got better sometimes. Before she got worse." Adrian's throat tightened. "This is different." "How?" "It just is." Marcus went back to his book, unsatisfied but unwilling to push. Adrian knocked on the guest suite door. Emily answered. She looked better. Color in her cheeks, steadiness in her stance. She was wearing clothes that actually fit, courtesy of the shopping service Adrian had arranged. Simple jeans and a sweater, but they made her look less like a ghost and more like a person. Then she saw Marcus, and something shifted in her expression. Not fear exactly, more like recognition, like she saw something in the quiet boy that resonated. "This is my son, Marcus," Adrian said. "Marcus, this is Miss Hart." Emily, she corrected quietly, then crouched down to the boy's level. What are you reading? Marcus held up the book without speaking. Dragons, Emily said. Do you like dragons? Marcus nodded. Me too. Did you know that in Chinese mythology, dragons are symbols of wisdom and good fortune? They're not the fire-breathing monsters you see in Western stories. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. Really? Really. They're called Long. They control water and weather and are considered very powerful protectors. It was the most Marcus had engaged with anyone in months. Adrian watched, stunned, as his son actually started talking, haltingly at first, then with more confidence, about dragons and magic and the stories he liked. Emily listened with the same focus she brought to everything, asking questions, responding thoughtfully, treating Marcus like his words mattered. Adrian felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept locked down since Sarah died. After 20 minutes, Marcus was sitting on Emily's couch, showing her his favorite illustrations, explaining the plot with the kind of enthusiasm Adrian had forgotten his son possessed. Emily glanced up at Adrian, and for the first time she smiled. A real smile. Small and careful, but genuine. He's sweet, she said quietly. He likes you. He likes dragons. I just happen to know about them. How do you know about Chinese dragons? Emily's smile faded slightly. I spent time in Hong Kong, a lifetime ago. Another piece of the puzzle. Adrian filed it away. When they finally left, Marcus was still talking. About dragons and Emily, and did Dad know that she spoke Mandarin and could she teach him some words sometime? Adrian looked down at his son, at the light that had come back into the boy's eyes, and made another decision he probably shouldn't have made. We'll ask her, he said. That night, after Marcus was asleep, Adrian went back to the guest suite. Emily answered the door in pajamas, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her. She looked younger, more vulnerable. He's a good kid, she said before Adrian could speak. He never talks like that, not anymore. Maybe he just needed someone who understands what it's like to hide. Adrian stepped inside. Is that what he's doing? Hiding? Aren't we all? They stood in the small living room, the city lights painting shadows across the walls. Adrian could see the IV stand in the corner, the medical supplies, the evidence of her weakness. But he could also see the strength in the way she held herself, the intelligence in her eyes, the carefully controlled power she kept leashed. Tell me your story, Adrian said quietly. Why? Because Marcus asked about you, and I don't know what to say. I don't know who you are. Emily sat down on the couch, pulling her knees up to her chest. For a long moment, Adrian thought she wouldn't answer. Then she started talking. I grew up in California. Normal family, normal childhood. My father was a businessman, import-export. My mother taught piano. I had a younger brother. Her voice was flat, reciting facts without emotion. When I was 18, my father made a deal. A business arrangement with a man named Victor Chen. Very wealthy, very connected, Chinese-American, with ties to Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing. Adrian sat down across from her, listening. Part of that deal, Emily continued, was that I would marry Victor Chen's son, a man named James. I never met him before the engagement was announced. I had no say in it. That's medieval. That's business. My father owed Victor Chen money, a lot of money, and Chen wanted a connection to an American family with the right background. I was the payment. Adrian's hands curled into fists. You were 18. I was property. Emily's voice didn't change, but Adrian could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers gripped her knees. James was 35. He had very specific ideas about what a wife should be. Quiet, obedient, decorative. He made that clear during our first meeting. What did you do? I smiled. I nodded. I played the role I was supposed to play. Emily looked up at Adrian. And then, 3 days before the wedding, I ran. How? I had a friend. Someone I'd met in college. She helped me get new documents, a new identity. I left California in the middle of the night, and I've been moving ever since. How long ago? 12 years. Adrian's mind raced. 12 years of running. 12 years of hiding. 12 years of never staying anywhere long enough to build a life. Why are they still looking for you? Emily's laugh was bitter. Because I embarrassed them, because I broke the agreement, because in their world, women don't get to say no. She stood up, pacing to the window. James Chen doesn't forget, and his father has enough money and connections to find anyone, given enough time. Have they found you before? Twice. Once in Denver, once in Chicago. Both times I got out before they got close. And now? Now, I don't know. Emily pressed her hand against the glass. I've been here 6 months. That's too long. I'm getting sloppy. That's why I collapsed. I've been so focused on staying invisible that I stopped taking care of myself. Adrian stood up and walked over to her. You don't have to run anymore. Yes, I do. No, you don't. He turned her to face him. I have resources, lawyers, security. I can protect you. You can't. Why not? Because Victor Chen has more money than you, more connections, more reach. Emily's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. And if you get involved, he'll destroy you too. Your business, your reputation, maybe even Marcus. Let him try. Adrian, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're scared. You've been scared for 12 years, and you're so used to running that you don't know how to stand still. He gripped her shoulders gently. But I'm not afraid of Victor Chen. I'm not afraid of his son, and I'm not going to let you disappear just because it's easier than fighting. It's not about easier. It's about survival. Then survive here, with me. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to acknowledge. Emily pulled away. You don't know what you're offering. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Because if they find me, they won't just take me back. They'll make sure everyone knows what happens when you cross them. They'll make an example. And you and Marcus will be collateral damage. Then we'll make sure they don't find you. How? Adrian thought about his contacts, his lawyers, the private investigators he'd used to vet business partners, the security consultants who'd helped protect Aurelius after the robbery. We go on offense, he said slowly. We find out what they're doing, where they are, what they want, and we make it more expensive for them to keep looking than to let you go. Emily stared at him like he'd lost his mind. That's insane. Probably. You'd risk everything. For you, yes. Why? And there it was, the question he'd been avoiding since the moment Emily Hart had walked into his life and turned it upside down. Because, Adrian said quietly, I haven't felt this alive in 3 years. Because Marcus smiled today for the first time in months. Because when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for. You barely know me. I know enough. Emily shook her head, but he could see the walls starting to crack, could see the part of her that wanted to believe him wrestling with the part that knew better. This is a mistake, she whispered. Probably. You're going to regret it. Maybe. Adrian, he cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Let me help you, please. And finally, she nodded. It was barely a movement, just the slightest tip of her head, but it was enough. Adrian pulled her into his arms, and for the first time since he'd met her, Emily Hart stopped fighting. She leaned into him, her forehead against his chest, her breath hitching once, twice. She didn't cry. He suspected she'd forgotten how, but she let him hold her, and that was something. We'll figure this out, Adrian said into her hair. Together. You're an idiot, Emily muttered. Probably. This is going to end badly. We'll see. She pulled back, looking up at him with those storm-gray eyes. If this goes wrong, if they come for me, you run. You take Marcus and you run. Promise me. I don't make promises I can't keep. Adrian, no. His voice was firm. I don't run. I never have. And I'm not starting now. Emily searched his face for a long moment, looking for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she finally relaxed. You're impossible, she said. So I've been told. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. No, Emily said softly. But for the first time in 12 years, I don't feel alone. Adrian smiled. Good. Because you're not. He left her there, standing in the window with the city lights behind her, looking less like a ghost and more like a woman. A woman with a past and a future, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at something better. When Adrian got back to his own apartment, he made a call to the best private investigator in New York, a man who specialized in finding things people didn't want found. "I need you to look into someone," Adrian said. "Victor Chen, James Chen, everything you can find. Business dealings, personal life, vulnerabilities. I want to know what they're afraid of." "This going to be a problem?" the investigator asked. "Probably." "Good. I like problems." Adrian hung up and poured himself a scotch. Outside the window, Manhattan glittered like a promise or a threat. He thought about Emily's story, about 12 years of running, about a woman who'd been treated like property and had the courage to say no. He thought about Marcus, smiling again, talking again, coming back to life. And he thought about the war that was coming, because Victor Chen wasn't going to let Emily go without a fight. And neither was Adrian. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice that sounded like Sarah's whispered a warning. "Be careful. You're falling for her." Adrian finished his scotch and smiled into the darkness. "I know," he said to the ghost. "I know." The investigator's name was Vincent Coe, and he had the kind of face that belonged in poker games where the stakes were measured in lives rather than money. He showed up at Adrian's office 4 days later with a manila folder thick enough to be a weapon. "You weren't kidding about this being complicated," Vincent said, dropping the folder on Adrian's desk. Adrian opened it. The first page was a photograph of Victor Chen, late 60s, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most cars. He looked like somebody's grandfather. He looked harmless. "Don't let the smile fool you," Vincent said. "Victor Chen owns half of the import-export business between Shanghai and Los Angeles. Legitimate on the surface. Underneath?" He shrugged. "Let's just say his connections go deep. Government officials, triad associates, corporate executives. The man has fingers in every pie that matters." "What about the son?" Vincent flipped to another photo. James Chen was handsome in that polished, expensive way that made Adrian's skin crawl. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, smile that didn't reach past his teeth. James is the heir apparent, runs the American operations. On paper, he's clean. Philanthropist, art collector, sits on the board of 3 major charities. Vincent's expression darkened. Off paper? He's got a reputation, likes control, likes things that belong to him staying where he puts them. Women. Among other things, I found 2 restraining orders that were filed and then mysteriously withdrawn, 1 harassment complaint that disappeared, and a pattern of relationships that end badly for everyone except James. Adrian's jaw tightened. Is he married? Divorced, 3 years ago. Wife got a settlement that included an NDA thick enough to choke on. Vincent pulled out another document. But here's what's interesting. They're still looking for Emily Hart, actively. I found records of private investigators being hired, surveillance teams deployed. They've been tracking her movements for years. How close are they? Close enough to worry about. They know she was in Chicago. They know she left around the same time your Emily showed up in New York. They're putting pieces together. Adrian felt ice slide down his spine. Do they know she's here? Not yet, but it's only a matter of time, especially after that robbery got press attention. They might not have connected the dots, but if anyone starts looking at your restaurant's employee records, she's listed under a false identity. How good? Adrian thought about Emily's reference checks, the careful construction of her fake past. Good enough to pass standard background checks. But if someone with resources really digs, they'll find her. Vincent leaned back. The question is, what do you want to do about it? Adrian stared at the photograph of James Chen, at the man who thought he owned Emily, who'd been hunting her for 12 years like she was property he'd misplaced. I want to know what he's afraid of, Adrian said quietly. Everyone has something they don't want exposed. Find it. Vincent smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Now you're talking my language. That evening, Adrian found Emily in the guest suite kitchen, teaching Marcus how to fold dumplings. The boy's hands were covered in flour, his face scrunched in concentration as he tried to crimp the edges the way Emily was showing him. Too much filling, Emily said gently, demonstrating again. See? Just a little bit in the center, then fold and press. Marcus tried again. The dumpling looked like something that had survived a small explosion, but Emily smiled anyway. Better. You're getting it. Adrian stood in the doorway watching them. Something twisted in his chest. Not pain exactly, but something close to it. This was what Marcus needed, what Adrian had been trying to give him for 3 years and failing. Just someone patient enough to meet him where he was. Emily looked up and caught his eye. Her smile faded slightly, reading something in his expression. "Marcus," she said, "why don't you take these to the steamer? I'll show you how to cook them in a minute." The boy carefully carried his mangled dumplings away. When he was out of earshot, Emily wiped her hands on a towel. "What happened?" Adrian pulled out the folder. "We need to talk." He told her everything. About Victor Chen's connections, James's reputation, the investigators still hunting her. Emily's face went paler with each detail, but she didn't interrupt, just listened with that same focused intensity she brought to everything. When he finished, she sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "I should leave," she said, "tonight, before they get closer." "No." "Adrian, you heard what he said. They're actively looking. If they find me here, if they connect me to you, they won't. You can't promise that. Watch me." Adrian sat across from her. "Vincent's good. The best. He's going to find something we can use against them. Something that makes it more expensive to keep hunting you than to let you go." Emily shook her head. "People like Victor Chen don't respond to threats. They respond to power. And he has more of it than we do." "Does he?" Adrian leaned forward. "He's built his empire on reputation, on the appearance of legitimacy. What happens when that appearance cracks? You want to expose him? I want to give him a reason to leave you alone. That's dangerous." "I don't care." Emily looked at him for a long moment, something complicated moving behind her eyes. "You should care. Marcus needs you. Your business needs you. I'm not worth—" "Don't!" Adrian's voice was sharp. "Don't tell me what you're worth. You don't get to decide that." "Then who does?" "I do, and you're worth fighting for." The words hung between them, too honest and too raw. Emily's eyes were bright, and for a horrible second, Adrian thought she might cry. But she didn't, just swallowed hard and looked away. "This is insane," she whispered. "Probably. You're going to get hurt." "Maybe." "I can't—" Her voice cracked. "I can't be responsible for that." Adrian reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. "You're not responsible for what James Chen does. You're not responsible for what your father did. You're only responsible for yourself. And right now, you get to choose whether to keep running or to stand and fight." "I've been running for 12 years. "I know." "I don't know how to stop." "Then I'll teach you." Emily's fingers tightened around his. "Why are you doing this?" It was the same question she kept asking, and Adrian still didn't have a good answer. Or rather, he had too many answers, and most of them scared him. Because she made Marcus smile. Because she moved through the world like she was apologizing for taking up space, and he wanted to teach her she didn't have to. Because when he looked at her, he saw someone fighting as hard as Sarah had fought, except Emily was fighting to live instead of fighting to die. Because somewhere in the last few weeks, he'd started falling for her, and he was too stubborn to stop. "Because I want to," he said simply. Emily searched his face. "You're an idiot." "So you've mentioned. This is going to end badly. You keep saying that because it's true." "We'll see." Marcus came back with the steamer, effectively ending the conversation. But Emily's hand stayed in Adrian's for another few seconds before she pulled away to help the boy cook his dumplings. Adrian watched them work together, watched the careful way Emily guided Marcus without pushing, the way his son actually laughed when one of the dumplings fell apart in the water. He thought about Sarah, about how she would have loved seeing Marcus like this, engaged, happy, present. And he thought about the war coming and how he was going to win it. 2 weeks passed. Emily moved back to her own apartment, a small studio in Queens that made Adrian want to burn something when he saw it. But she came to the restaurant every day. She was stronger now, eating regularly, the color back in her face. She'd accepted the raise, the health insurance, the new title Adrian had created for her, hospitality consultant. It meant she spent less time waiting tables and more time training staff. handling VIP guests, solving problems. She was brilliant at it. Within days, the entire operation ran smoother. Guests who'd been difficult for months became cooperative under Emily's quiet management. Staff who'd been ready to quit stayed. Even Richard seemed less stressed. "She's good," Richard said one night, watching Emily handle a tech billionaire who'd shown up without a reservation and expected immediate seating. "Really good. Where did you find her?" "She found me," Adrian said. Marcus started spending more time at the restaurant too, doing homework in Adrian's office, helping Emily prep vegetables in the kitchen, charming the line cooks with his quiet intensity. Adrian hadn't planned it, but somehow his work life and his home life were bleeding together, and he didn't hate it. Vincent called on a Thursday morning with news. "Found something," he said without preamble. "James Chen has a business partner, guy named Robert Maxwell. They're working on a real estate development deal in Los Angeles. Shopping centers, residential towers, the works. Worth about $800 million if it goes through. And Robert Maxwell is your business partner too, the one you brought in to expand Aurelius into Los Angeles." Adrian's blood went cold. "What?" "Maxwell Development Group. You've got them listed as a 30% stakeholder in the LA expansion. Same company that's partnered with James Chen on the real estate deal." Adrian's mind raced. Robert Maxwell. He'd known the man for 5 years. They'd done 3 deals together, all profitable. Robert was supposed to be opening the Los Angeles location of Aurelius in 6 months. "Are you telling me Maxwell knows about Emily?" "I'm telling you that if James Chen is looking for leverage, and he knows you're connected to Emily, Maxwell is a very convenient connection point." Son of a bitch. "There's more. I pulled phone records. Maxwell's been in contact with James Chen's office weekly for the past 2 months, way more than a normal business relationship would require." Adrian's hand tightened around the phone. "He sold her out." "Can't prove it yet, but yeah, that's my read. Find proof." "Working on it." Adrian hung up and immediately called his lawyer. 20 minutes later, he had a forensic accountant pulling every financial record related to Robert Maxwell. By afternoon, the picture was clear and ugly. Maxwell had been bleeding money, bad investments, gambling debts, a lifestyle his actual income couldn't support. The deal with James Chen wasn't just business. It was a lifeline. And if James wanted information about Emily Hart in exchange for keeping that deal alive, Maxwell would have given it to him without blinking. Adrian sat in his office, staring at the contracts that tied him to Maxwell, thinking about how close they'd come to disaster. If Vincent hadn't found this, if Emily had stayed visible just a little bit longer, if James had moved just a little bit faster. He called Emily. "We have a problem," he said when she answered. She met him at the restaurant an hour later. Adrian laid out everything: Maxwell's connection to James Chen, the phone records, the financial pressure, the likelihood that Maxwell had already told James where to find her. Emily listened without expression. When he finished, she stood up and walked to the window. "I need to leave," she said. "Now, tonight." "No." "Adrian, he knows. If James knows I'm here, if he knows I'm connected to you, then we deal with it." "How?" Emily spun around, fear and anger blazing in her eyes. "How do we deal with a man who has infinite resources and no conscience? He's not going to stop. He's not going to negotiate. He's going to come here and take me back and destroy everyone who helped me, and you can't—" "Emily." Adrian crossed the room and gripped her shoulders. "Listen to me. I'm not letting that happen. You can't stop it." "Yes, I can. Maxwell gave him information. Fine. But information is a two-way street, and I have something James Chen wants more than revenge." "What?" "Reputation. Legitimacy. The appearance of being a respectable businessman." Adrian's mind was working now, seeing the angles, finding the leverage. If I expose his connection to organized crime, his harassment of you, the illegal surveillance, he loses everything. His business partners drop him. His charity boards kick him off. His father's empire takes a hit it might not recover from. "You'd go to war with the Chens?" "If that's what it takes." Emily shook her head. "You're insane. They'll destroy you." "They can try." "Adrian." He cupped her face in his hands. "I am not losing you. Not to James Chen, not to fear, not to anything. So either we fight together, or I fight alone. But I'm fighting." Emily's eyes searched his. Why? And there it was again, the question she kept asking because she genuinely couldn't understand why anyone would risk themselves for her. Adrian kissed her. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated. He just needed her to understand that this wasn't about charity or guilt or some savior complex. This was about the fact that Emily Hart had walked into his life and reminded him what it felt like to care about something more than money. She froze for a second, surprised. Then she kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. It was desperate and messy and tasted like fear and hope in equal measure. When they broke apart, Emily was breathing hard. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. "Probably. We're going to get hurt. Maybe. I don't know how to do this, how to stay, how to trust that it won't all fall apart." "Neither do I," Adrian admitted. "Sarah's been gone 3 years, and I still don't know how to live without her. Marcus barely talks to me. I've been going through the motions, building an empire because it's the only thing I know how to do. And then you showed up and suddenly everything's complicated and terrifying and I don't know what I'm doing." Emily laughed, but it sounded like a sob. "We're a mess. Complete disaster. This is never going to work." "Probably not. So what do we do?" Adrian pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "We try anyway." They stood there in his office, holding each other while the city moved below them, two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole. The call came 3 days later. Adrian was at home with Marcus when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Adrian Vale?" The voice was smooth, educated, with just a hint of an accent. "Who is this?" "James Chen. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Adrian's blood turned to ice. He glanced at Marcus, who was reading on the couch, oblivious. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence. Emily Hart works for you. She's living in your building. You've been very generous with her." "Miss Hart is my employee, that's all." "Is it?" James's voice hardened. "You're sleeping in my bed, Mr. Vale. Using what's mine. I don't appreciate that." "Emily isn't property. She's a person. And she made her choice 12 years ago. She made a mistake, one I'm willing to forgive if she comes home where she belongs. She's not going anywhere. I think she will." There was a sound in the background like papers shuffling. "You have a son, Marcus, 8 years old, attends Riverside Academy on the Upper East Side. Gets picked up every day at 3:15 by a nanny named Catherine Rodriguez." Adrian's heart stopped. "If you touch my son, I'm not a monster, Mr. Vale. I don't hurt children, but I am a businessman. And right now, you're interfering with my business. So I'm giving you one opportunity to correct that mistake. Send Emily back to me, voluntarily. And I'll forget we ever had this conversation. Go to hell." "Unfortunate," James sighed. "I tried to be reasonable. Remember that." The line went dead. Adrian immediately called his head of security. Within an hour, Marcus's school had additional guards. The nanny had a security escort. Adrian's building went into lockdown, and Emily was summoned to his apartment. She arrived pale and shaking, already knowing what had happened. "He called you," she said. "He threatened Marcus." "I told you." Emily's voice broke. "I told you this would happen. He doesn't stop. He doesn't negotiate. He just takes." "Then we take something from him first." Adrian pulled out his phone and called Vincent. "I need everything you have on James Chen. Every illegal deal, every shady connection, every piece of dirt. And I need it now." "Adrian, what are you doing?" Emily asked. "Starting a war." "You can't watch me." He turned to her. "You said he cares about reputation, about appearing legitimate. Fine, let's destroy that. Let's make him so toxic that no one wants to touch him. His business partners, his charity boards, his father's precious empire. We burn it all." Emily stared at him. "That's suicide. The Chens have lawyers, money, connections. So do I. And I have something they don't." "What?" "The truth." Adrian pulled her close. "You were 18. They tried to force you into marriage. You ran. Everything he's done since then is harassment, stalking, illegal surveillance. We document it. We expose it. We make him the villain he actually is. The media won't care. Rich people get away with this all the time. Not if we do it right. Not if we make it impossible to ignore. Adrian was thinking fast now, seeing the strategy. We go to the press, the right press, the kind that loves a good David versus Goliath story. We get your story out there, we show what he is. He'll destroy you. He can try, but I've spent 15 years building a reputation. I've got relationships with every major publication in this city. I've got friends in high places and favors I can call in. And I've got you. He gripped her shoulders. You're the proof. You're the evidence. Your story matters. Emily shook her head, tears finally spilling over. I can't relive it. I can't stand in front of cameras and tell the world what they tried to do to me. You don't have to do it alone. I'll be with you. Why? The word was anguished. Why would you risk everything for me? Adrian wiped her tears with his thumbs. Because I love you. The words fell between them like stones into water, rippling outward. Emily's eyes went wide. What? I love you, Adrian said again, more certain this time. I didn't plan it, didn't want it, but somewhere between you saving my life and teaching my son about dragons and showing me what courage actually looks like, I fell in love with you. So yeah, I'm going to fight for you. Because that's what you do when you love someone. Emily was crying harder now, shaking her head. You don't, you can't, you barely know me. I know enough. I'm broken, I'm damaged, You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I love you. He kissed her forehead. So we're doing this. Together. Emily buried her face in his chest, her shoulders shaking. I'm scared. Me too. What if we lose? Then we lose fighting, but we don't give up. She pulled back, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Okay? 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 We fight. Adrian kissed her then, and it felt like a promise, like a declaration of war, like the beginning of something that would either save them or destroy them both. When they broke apart, Emily wiped her eyes. So what do we do first? We call a lawyer, we document everything, and then we go on a fence. But even as he said it, even as they started planning their strategy, Adrian felt the dread settling in his bones. Because James Chen had threatened Marcus, had made it clear that nothing was off limits. And Adrian knew with sick certainty that this was only the beginning. The attack came 2 days later. Emily was walking back to her apartment after her shift when someone grabbed her from behind. She reacted on instinct, twisting free, driving her elbow back. But there were 2 of them, and they were ready for her. A cloth pressed over her mouth. Chemical smell. Her vision blurred. She fought anyway. Heard shouting, car doors, the world tilting sideways. Then nothing. Adrian got the call at midnight. Vincent, his voice tight with fury. They took her. Surveillance caught 2 men grabbing her outside her building. Black sedan, no plates. They were gone before building security could respond. Adrian felt his world tilt. Where is she? I don't know. I'm working on it. But Adrian, they left something. What? A message. For you. What does it say? Vincent was quiet for a second. It says, return what's mine or lose what's yours. Adrian's blood turned to ice. He looked at Marcus's bedroom door, thought about his son sleeping peacefully, unaware that everything was falling apart. Find her, Adrian said. Whatever it takes. Find her. I'm on it. Adrian hung up and called his security team, his lawyers, his contacts in the NYPD. He called everyone he could think of who might be able to help. And then he sat in his dark living room and did something he hadn't done since Sarah died. He fell apart. The apartment was too quiet. Adrian sat on the couch in the dark, his phone clutched in his hand, waiting for news that didn't come. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like drowning. Marcus appeared in his doorway at 2 a.m, rubbing his eyes. Dad, why are you still up? Adrian forced himself to sound normal. Just working. Go back to bed. Is Miss Emily okay? The question hit like a fist. What? She didn't come say goodnight. She always says goodnight when she's here. Adrian's throat closed. Of course Marcus had noticed. The boy noticed everything, filed it away in that quiet mind of his, worried about it in silence. She had to go somewhere, Adrian said carefully. She'll be back soon. Marcus studied him with those dark, knowing eyes. You're lying. Marcus, Mom used to say she'd be back soon too, but she didn't come back. She died. Adrian stood up and crossed to his son, kneeling down to his level. Emily is not dying, I promise you that. Then where is she? I don't know, but I'm going to find her. Marcus wrapped his arms around Adrian's neck, holding on tight. Don't let her disappear like Mom did. I won't, Adrian whispered into his son's hair. I won't. He carried Marcus back to bed, sat with him until the boy fell asleep. Then he went back to the living room and made more calls. Vincent called at 4 in the morning. Found her, he said. Warehouse in Red Hook. Industrial area, mostly abandoned. I've got eyes on the building. 2 guards outside, at least 3 inside. They're not being subtle about it. Is she alive? Can't confirm, but they left the message for a reason. They want you to come get her. It's a trap. Obviously. Adrian thought fast. How many men can you get me? This isn't my area, Vale. I find information. You want muscle? You need different connections. Then get me those connections. You're serious about this. Vincent, they have Emily, so yes, I'm serious. There was a pause. I know a guy. Former Marine, runs a private security firm, discreet operations. But it's going to cost. I don't care what it costs. And it's going to be loud. Police will get involved. Let them. Another pause. You're going to war. I've been at war since they threatened my son. Now I'm just making it official. Vincent gave him a number. Adrian called it immediately. The man who answered had a voice like gravel. This is Reese. I need extraction. Hostile situation. Red Hook warehouse. How fast can you mobilize? Who is this? Adrian Vale. Vincent Coe gave me your number. Vincent. A grunt that might have been approval. What's the situation? They took someone I care about. I'm getting her back. How hostile? Armed guards. Unknown number inside. Potentially violent. Police involved? Not yet, but they will be. This legal? She was kidnapped. I'm getting her back. You tell me. Reese was quiet for a moment. I can have a team ready in 2 hours, but this is going to cost you $50,000, half up front. Done. I'll transfer it now. And Vale? If shooting starts, my men defend themselves. That okay with you? Adrian thought about Emily, about what they might be doing to her right now. Yes. Good. Send me the address. We'll meet you there at 0600. Adrian hung up and started making arrangements. Money transfers. Instructions to his lawyer about what to do if this went wrong. A letter for Marcus, sealed and left on his desk, just in case. Then he armed himself. He didn't own guns. Sarah had hated them. But after she died, after he became a single father with enemies, he'd kept one locked in his office safe. A Glock 19. He'd gone to the range exactly 3 times to learn how to use it. Now, he loaded it with shaking hands and hoped he wouldn't have to fire it. Marcus was still asleep when Adrian left at 5:30. The nanny was staying overnight, armed guards outside the apartment. If something happened to Adrian, his lawyer had instructions. Marcus would be taken care of, protected. But Adrian wasn't planning on dying today. Red Hook, before dawn, was industrial wasteland. Abandoned warehouses, rusted shipping containers, streets that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. The kind of place where things happened and nobody asked questions. Reese and his team were waiting in a black van 2 blocks from the Target building. 4 men, all ex-military, all carrying themselves with the kind of quiet competence that came from seeing real combat. Reese himself was in his 40s, built like a brick wall, with scars that told stories he probably wouldn't share. He looked Adrian up and down, taking in the expensive suit, the obvious inexperience. You ever done anything like this before? Reese asked. No. You gonna freeze when things get loud? No? You sure? Adrian met his eyes. They have someone I love. I'm not freezing. Reese nodded slowly. Okay. Here's how this works. My team goes in first. We clear the guards, secure the perimeter. You stay behind us. You don't play hero. You don't do anything stupid. When we find your girl, you get her and we extract. Clean, fast, professional. Understood? Understood. And Vale? If she's already dead, she's not. But if she is, we leave. We don't stay to fight. We don't get revenge. We extract and regroup. That clear? Adrian's jaw tightened. Clear. They moved at 5:50, using the pre-dawn darkness as cover. The warehouse was a 3-story concrete block with broken windows and graffiti covering every surface. 2 guards stood outside, smoking cigarettes, looking bored. Reese's men moved like shadows. 1 second the guards were standing, the next they were on the ground, zip-tied and unconscious. Adrian didn't even see what happened. The door was locked. One of Reese's men, a lean Asian guy who moved like water, picked it in under 30 seconds. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous and dark. Metal catwalks overhead, shipping crates stacked haphazardly, the smell of rust and old oil. Somewhere in the distance, voices. Reese signaled. His team split up, 2 going left, 1 going right. Adrian stayed with Reese, moving through the darkness, every sense screaming danger. They found the first guard on the 2nd floor. He was standing outside a door, looking at his phone. Reese took him down with brutal efficiency. 1 strike, perfectly placed. The man crumpled. Reese tried the door, locked. He looked at Adrian and held up 3 fingers. 3 more people inside. Adrian nodded. Reese kicked the door open and went in fast, his team right behind him. Adrian heard shouting, the sound of bodies hitting the floor, a gunshot that made his ears ring. Then silence. "Clear!" Reese called. Adrian stepped inside. The room was small, concrete-walled, with a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Emily was there, slumped in a chair, her hands zip-tied behind her back. Blood on her face, her shirt torn, but alive. Adrian crossed the room in 3 steps and dropped to his knees in front of her. Emily. Her eyes opened slowly, struggling to focus. "Adrian? I'm here. I've got you." "You shouldn't—" She winced. "You shouldn't have come." "Like hell I shouldn't." Reese was cutting the zip ties. "We need to move, now. Those shots are going to bring police." Adrian helped Emily to her feet. She swayed, leaning heavily against him. "Can you walk?" "Yeah, I think so." They made it out of the building and into the van before the sirens started. Reese drove like he was being chased by demons, taking corners that made Adrian's stomach lurch. Emily was in the back, one of Reese's medics checking her injuries. "Bruised ribs," the medic said. "Possible concussion. She needs a hospital." "No," Emily said immediately. "No hospitals." "Emily? They'll file reports, records. James will find them." She grabbed Adrian's hand. "Please, no hospitals." Adrian looked at Reese. "You know a doctor who makes house calls?" "I know a guy, but it's going to cost." "Everything costs today. I don't care." They ended up at Adrian's building, sneaking Emily in through the service entrance while police sirens wailed in the distance. The doctor, a retired trauma surgeon who asked no questions, met them in Adrian's apartment and examined Emily in the guest bedroom. Marcus was awake by then. He took one look at Emily's battered face and went pale. "Is she going to die?" he asked. "No," Adrian said firmly. "She's going to be fine. Promise?" "Promise." The doctor came out an hour later. 3 cracked ribs, mild concussion, cuts and bruises. She's lucky. Another few hours and they might have done real damage. What did they do to her? Roughed her up, scared her. From what I can tell, they were waiting for something or someone. The doctor looked at Adrian meaningfully. "They were waiting for me." "Well, you got there in time. She'll recover. But she needs rest. No stress, no excitement, no—" "I know. Thank you." After the doctor left, Adrian sat with Emily. She was lying in bed, her face a mess of bruises, her breathing shallow and pained. "You're an idiot," she said quietly. "So I've been told." "You could have been killed." "So could you." "That's different." "How?" Emily looked at him with those gray eyes. "Because I've been living on borrowed time for 12 years. But you have Marcus. You have a life. You can't risk that for me. Watch me." "Adrian?" He took her hand. "They made a mistake. They thought if they took you, I'd back down. Give you up to save myself." He leaned closer. "But they don't understand that losing you would destroy me just as much as losing Marcus. So they don't get to win. Not today, not ever." Emily's eyes filled with tears. What did they do to you? Nothing. They just waited, asked questions about you, about us. I didn't tell them anything. Emily, I need to know. Did they? No? She understood what he was asking. They wanted me intact. For James. He's very particular about his property not being damaged by anyone except him. The words made Adrian want to break something. He's not getting you back. He won't stop. Neither will I. Emily squeezed his hand. So what now? Now we finish this. Adrian called Robert Maxwell at 8 in the morning. The man answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. Adrian, what's going on? We need to talk. My office, 1 hour. I'm in Los Angeles. I can't just then get on a plane. Because if you're not here in 6 hours, I'm going to the press with everything I know about your deal with James Chen. Silence. Then, carefully, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You sold Emily Hart's location to James Chen in exchange for keeping your real estate deal alive. You betrayed a woman who was hiding from an abuser because you needed the money. Adrian's voice was ice. So either you get on a plane right now and help me fix this, or I destroy you. Your choice. Adrian, listen. 6 hours, Robert. Don't be late. He hung up. Vincent called 10 minutes later. The police found the warehouse. They're asking questions. Your name hasn't come up yet, but it will. I don't care. You should care. You just staged a paramilitary raid on private property. That's multiple felonies. They kidnapped Emily. Can you prove it? Adrian looked at Emily sleeping in his guest room. Yes. Good, because you're going to need that proof. I'm hearing James Chen's lawyers are already mobilizing. They're going to claim Emily came willingly, that you're the aggressor. Let them claim whatever they want. I'm done playing defense. What are you planning? I'm going to give James Chen exactly what he asked for. A meeting. Vincent was quiet. That's insane. Probably. He'll kill you. He'll try. But I have something he wants, and he has something I want. What? Peace. For Emily, for Marcus, for all of us. Adrian stared out at the city. I'm going to buy him off. With what? Whatever it takes. Robert Maxwell arrived at Adrian's office at 2 in the afternoon, looking like he'd aged 10 years. His suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. You're destroying me, he said instead of hello. You destroyed yourself when you sold out Emily. I didn't have a choice. James Chen owns half my debt. If that real estate deal falls through, I'm bankrupt. So you traded a woman's safety for your financial security. Robert collapsed into a chair. I didn't think he'd hurt her. I thought he just wanted to talk to her, to convince her to come back. He kidnapped her, beat her, terrorized her. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. Adrian leaned against his desk. But you're going to make this right. How? You're going to call James Chen. You're going to arrange a meeting, him and me, face to face. Robert's eyes widened. That's suicide. That's negotiation, and you're going to make it happen. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I leak everything to the press. Your gambling debts, your connection to Chen, the fact that you enabled a kidnapping. You'll never work in this city again. Your wife will leave you. Your kids will be ashamed of you. Adrian's voice was cold. Or you set up the meeting and I bury all of it. You get to keep your reputation, maybe even keep your business. Robert stared at him. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you a choice. Same thing James Chen did to you. How does it feel? Robert's hands were shaking. What do you want me to tell him? Tell him I want to negotiate Emily's freedom. Tell him I'm willing to pay whatever price he sets. Tell him to name the time and place. He'll never agree to that. Yes, he will. Because he's been chasing Emily for 12 years and getting nowhere. I'm offering him a chance to end it, to get what he wants and walk away clean. Adrian moved closer. Make the call, Robert. Robert pulled out his phone with trembling hands. The meeting was set for the next evening. Neutral Ground, a private club in Midtown that catered to billionaires and foreign dignitaries. The kind of place where conversations worth millions happened over scotch and cigars. Emily fought him on it. You can't negotiate with him, she said from her bed, where she was supposed to be resting. He doesn't negotiate, he takes. Then I'll give him something worth taking. Adrian, he wants me. That's what he's always wanted. You can't. I'm not giving him you, I'm giving him money. He has money. Not like this. I'm going to offer him enough to make walking away more profitable than continuing the chase. Emily shook her head. You don't understand men like James. It's not about money. It's about control, about owning things that belong to him. You never belong to him. He thinks I do. That's what matters. Adrian sat on the edge of her bed. Then I'll make him think differently. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Emily reached for his hand. Don't go, please. Just take Marcus and run. Go somewhere he can't find you. I'm not running. Why not? Because running didn't save you. 12 years of hiding, and he still found you. So I'm going to try something different. What? Standing my ground. The night before the meeting, Adrian couldn't sleep. He stood in his study, staring at Sarah's photograph, wondering what she would think of all this. Would she tell him he was being brave or stupid? Probably both. Marcus found him there at midnight. You're going to meet the bad man tomorrow, the boy said. Not a question. Yes. Are you scared? Adrian knelt down, terrified. Then why are you going? Because sometimes the right thing is also the scary thing. Marcus thought about that. Is Miss Emily the right thing? Yes. Even if you get hurt? Even then. Marcus hugged him tight. I don't want you to go. I know, buddy, but I have to. Why? Because I love her. And when you love someone, you fight for them. Marcus pulled back. Did you fight for Mom? The question broke Adrian's heart. Every day, but sometimes the fight isn't enough. Is it going to be enough for Miss Emily? I hope so. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay. But Dad, if the bad man hurts you, I'm going to be really mad. Adrian smiled despite everything. Deal. The club was called the Redwood. Old money, older secrets. Adrian arrived at 7, wearing his best suit, carrying nothing but his phone and his lawyer's card. James Chen was already there, sitting in a private room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was exactly as handsome as his photographs, exactly as cold as Emily had described. Mr. Vale, James said, standing to shake hands. Thank you for coming. Adrian didn't shake. Let's skip the pleasantries. James smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. As you wish. Shall we sit? They sat across from each other, a table between them. James poured 2 glasses of scotch from a crystal decanter. Adrian didn't touch his. You wanted to negotiate, James said, so negotiate. Emily Hart is not going back to you. We'll see. This isn't a debate. It's a statement of fact. She's not your property. She never was. The marriage contract was fraudulent. She was 18, coerced, and it was never legally binding. That's your lawyer talking. That's the truth. James sipped his scotch. Emily made a promise. Her family made a promise. Breaking promises has consequences. Not for 12 years it doesn't. You've been harassing her, stalking her, using illegal surveillance. I have documentation, evidence, enough to bury you in court and the media. And I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers who will tie up your evidence for years. Connections who will make your life very difficult. James leaned forward. You're playing a game you don't understand, Mr. Vale. This isn't business. This is honor, family, legacy. This is obsession. And it ends tonight. Does it? James's smile widened. How much are you willing to pay for her freedom? Finally, the real negotiation. Adrian pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. $20 million, wired to an account of your choosing. In exchange, you sign a legally binding agreement to cease all contact with Emily Hart. No harassment, no surveillance, no threats. You walk away and never look back. James didn't even open the folder. Not enough. 30 million. Not about the money. 50 million. You're not listening. James set down his glass. I don't want your money, Mr. Vale. I want what's mine. I want Emily on a plane to Hong Kong. I want her standing beside me at the charity gala next month. I want the world to see that she came back where she belongs. That's never going to happen. Then we have nothing to discuss. Adrian felt his plan crumbling. He'd counted on greed, on James being the kind of man who could be bought. But Emily had been right. This wasn't about money. What do you want? Adrian asked quietly. James studied him. I want to understand what makes her worth destroying yourself for. She's pretty, I'll grant you, but there are prettier women, smarter women, women who wouldn't bring this much trouble into your life. She's worth it because she's Emily. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting, James laughed. You're in love with her. Actually in love. How quaint. He stood up. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Vale. You're going to bring Emily to my father's estate in the Hamptons this weekend. You're going to watch her apologize to my family for the embarrassment she caused, and then you're going to walk away while she comes home with me. No. Or I make your life a living nightmare. I destroy your business. I tie you up in legal battles for decades. I make sure Marcus grows up knowing his father threw everything away for a woman who wasn't worth it. Adrian stood up slowly. You're threatening my son again. I'm stating facts. Here's a fact for you. Emily Hart is the strongest, bravest, most incredible person I've ever met. And I'm not giving her to you. Not for money, not for threats, not for anything. Adrian moved toward the door. So do your worst. Destroy my business. Sue me into oblivion. Come at me with everything you've got. But you're never touching her again. You'll regret this. Adrian turned back. The only thing I regret is not finding her sooner. He walked out of the redwood knowing he'd just declared war. Knowing James Chen would make good on every threat, knowing his life was about to become a battlefield, but he also knew he'd made the right choice. Emily was awake when he got home, sitting in his living room despite her injuries. How did it go? He said no. I told you he would. He wants you at his father's estate this weekend, wants you to apologize, wants you to come back. And you said? I told him to go to hell. Emily closed her eyes. Then it's war. Yes. He's going to destroy you. Probably. Adrian? He sat beside her and took her hand. I had a choice tonight. Buy your freedom or fight for it. I chose fight. Why? Because some things can't be bought. Some things are worth losing everything for. He looked at her. You're worth losing everything for. Emily kissed him then, despite the pain it caused her ribs. You're still an idiot. I know. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I know that too. So what do we do? Adrian thought about his options, about James's resources and connections, about the fact that he'd just made an enemy of one of the most powerful families in international business. Then he thought about Emily's grandfather, the one detail she'd mentioned once and never again. The reason her family had needed Victor Chen's money in the first place. Emily, he said slowly, your grandfather, is he still alive? She tensed. Why? Because if James wants family honor, maybe we give him family. Different family. Yours. My grandfather disowned me when I ran. Did he? Or did your father tell you that? Emily went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying we find out the truth. And if your grandfather supports you, if he's willing to go against your father's deal with the Chens, that's leverage, Emily finished. That's war. Emily looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. His name is Thomas Hart. He lives in San Francisco. I haven't spoken to him in 12 years. Then it's time for a reunion. They flew to San Francisco the next morning, bringing Marcus and enough security to fight a small war. Vincent had located Thomas Hart, 83 years old, retired, living in a modest house in Pacific Heights. The old man who answered the door looked at Emily like he was seeing a ghost. Emily? His voice broke. Is that really you? Hi, Grandpa, Emily said quietly. Thomas Hart pulled her into his arms and wept. Inside Thomas Hart's living room, surrounded by photographs of a family that had fractured 12 years ago, Emily sat beside her grandfather and tried not to cry. The old man held her hand like he was afraid she might disappear again. I thought you were dead, Thomas said, his voice shaking. Your father told me you'd run off with some man. Said you were ungrateful, reckless. Said you'd probably gotten yourself killed. I've been hiding, Emily said quietly. Running, trying to stay alive, from James Chen. She nodded. Thomas's face hardened. I never wanted that marriage. Never. But your father... He stopped, seemed to gather himself. Your father owed Victor Chen $3 million. Gambling debts, bad investments, things he'd hidden from all of us. Victor offered to forgive it all if you married James. I told him no. Told him to let me pay the debt instead. But your father had already agreed. You tried to stop it? Of course I tried to stop it. You were 18 years old, a child. But your father had already signed the contracts, already shaken hands, already committed you. Thomas's eyes were wet. I told him I'd cut him out of my will if he went through with it. He said he didn't care, said the debt would destroy the whole family if Victor called it in. Emily's hands were shaking. I thought Dad told me you approved, that you thought it was a good match. He lied to you. Adrian, who'd been standing by the window with Marcus, spoke up. Where's Emily's father now? Thomas's expression turned bitter. Dead. Heart attack 6 years ago. Drank himself into it, from what I heard. Your mother too, Emily. Cancer 3 years back. She tried to find you before she died. Hired investigators, but you'd vanished completely. Emily made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. Adrian moved to her side, his hand on her shoulder. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know Mom was looking for me. She regretted it, the marriage arrangement, everything. But by the time she found the courage to stand up to your father, you were already gone. Thomas squeezed her hand. She loved you, Emily. Never stopped loving you. Marcus, who'd been quiet until now, moved closer to Emily. My mom died too, he said softly. It's really sad. Emily looked down at the boy, tears streaming down her face. Yeah, it really is. Thomas studied Adrian carefully. And you are? Adrian Vale. I employ Emily, and he hesitated, then decided honesty was the only option. And I love her. He's been fighting James Chen for me, Emily added, protecting me, even though it's destroying his life. Thomas's eyebrows rose. Fighting the Chens, that's not a small thing. I'm aware. Victor Chen has connections that reach into governments, corporations, criminal organizations. He's not a man you cross lightly. I don't care who he's connected to. Emily isn't going back to James. Thomas studied Adrian for a long moment. Then slowly, he smiled. Good. It's about time someone stood up to those bastards. He turned to Emily. What do you need from me? I need you to help me end this, Emily said. James won't negotiate, won't accept money. He wants me back as a matter of honor, family honor. But if you publicly denounce the marriage contract, if you say it was coerced and fraudulent, that undermines Victor Chen's whole claim, Thomas finished. Makes him look like he extorted an 18-year-old girl into marriage. It's the truth. Truth doesn't always matter to men like Victor, but public perception does, especially in their community. Thomas stood up, moving to a desk in the corner. I have documents. The original loan agreements between your father and Victor. Letters I wrote to your father opposing the marriage. Phone records from when I tried to hire lawyers to stop it. He pulled out a folder, thick with papers. I've been keeping these for 12 years, just in case. In case of what? In case you came back. In case you needed proof that you weren't running from a legitimate marriage, that you were escaping coercion. He handed the folder to Adrian. Use it. Destroy them if you can. Adrian opened the folder, scanning the documents. His lawyer mind immediately recognized their value. These weren't just proof. They were ammunition. This could work, he said slowly. If we go public with this, if we expose the extortion, the coercion, Victor Chen will sue you for defamation, Thomas said. He'll claim the marriage was legitimate, that Emily was a willing participant, that you're fabricating evidence. Let him sue. Discovery alone will destroy him. We'll subpoena every document, every witness, every piece of communication between him and Emily's father. The truth will come out. That could take years. I don't care how long it takes. Emily was shaking her head. He'll come after you while the lawsuit is pending. He'll destroy your business, hurt people around you. Then we make sure the story gets out before he can react, Adrian said. We go to the press, not the tabloids, the serious journalists, the ones who care about truth more than clicks. We give them everything, the whole story. And we do it now, before James Chen knows what's happening. Thomas smiled grimly. You're declaring total war. I declared war when I walked out of that meeting. Now I'm just making sure I win. They caught a red-eye back to New York that night. On the plane, while Marcus slept across Adrian's lap and Emily dozed fitfully in the seat beside him, Adrian made calls to his lawyer, who started drafting legal documents. to Vincent, who had connections at the New York Times and the Washington Post, to his publicist, who nearly had a heart attack when Adrian told her what he was planning. "You want to accuse Victor Chen of human trafficking?" she said. "Adrian, that's career suicide." "It's not trafficking, it's coercion, and it's the truth. The Chens will bury you. Let them try." By the time they landed at JFK, the plan was in motion. A meeting set with a Times investigative journalist for the next morning. Legal documents being prepared. Thomas Hart flying in from San Francisco to give his own statement. Emily was terrified. "This is going to get ugly," she said as they drove back to Adrian's building. "Really ugly. They're going to dig into your life, my life, everything. They're going to make us look like liars or opportunists or, I know. Marcus is going to see his father in the news, fighting a public battle. I know." "Adrian, are you sure about this?" He looked at her, at this woman who'd spent 12 years running and hiding and making herself invisible just to survive. "I've never been more sure of anything." The next morning, Adrian sat across from Jennifer Walsh, senior investigative reporter for the New York Times. She was in her 50s, with steel gray hair and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. Emily sat beside him, Thomas on her other side. They'd laid out everything: the documents, the timeline, the years of harassment and stalking. Jennifer took notes, asked questions, recorded everything. "This is explosive," she said finally, "but I need more than documents. I need corroboration. Other victims, maybe. People who can testify to James Chen's pattern of behavior." "I found 2 other women," Vincent said from the corner. "Both had relationships with James that ended badly. Both willing to talk, if you guarantee anonymity." Jennifer nodded slowly. "I'll need a few days to verify everything. Interview the other women. Reach out to the Chens for comment. Don't give them advance warning," Adrian said sharply. "If Victor knows this is coming, he'll use his connections to kill the story before it publishes." "I can't publish an investigative piece without giving the subjects a chance to respond. That's basic journalistic ethics." "Then give them 24 hours, not a week. Not time to mobilize their lawyers and their PR teams. 24 hours. Jennifer considered this. 48 hours? That's as low as I can go and still feel comfortable with the ethics. Fine. 48 hours. They shook hands. Jennifer left with her notes and her recordings and a story that would either expose one of the most powerful families in international business or blow up in all their faces. Emily was shaking when they got back to the car. "We just put a target on our backs," she said. "We did. James is going to retaliate. The moment he hears about this, I know, that's why we're not going to be easy targets." Adrian turned to Vincent. "I need security, real security, armed guards, surveillance, the works. For me, for Emily, for Marcus." "Already arranged. Reese's team is standing by." "Good. And I want eyes on the Chens. I want to know where James is, where Victor is, what they're doing. That's going to cost." "I don't care." The next 2 days were the longest of Adrian's life. He went to work at Aurelius, conducted meetings, reviewed menus, pretended everything was normal while armed guards shadowed his every move. Marcus stayed home from school, protected by a security detail that made the boy's eyes go wide. "Are we in danger?" Marcus asked. Adrian thought about lying, decided his son deserved better. "Maybe, but I'm making sure you're safe." "Because of Miss Emily." "Yeah." Marcus thought about this. "She must be really special." "She is. Special enough to fight bad guys for?" "Definitely." Marcus nodded like this made perfect sense. "Okay. But Dad, after you win, can we go back to normal? I miss school." Adrian smiled despite everything. "Yeah, buddy. After we win, we go back to normal." "If we win," he didn't say. "If we survive this." The call from Jennifer Walsh came on the 3rd day. "Story's ready," she said. "Publishing tomorrow morning. Front page, above the fold. We've got statements from the 2 other women, verification on all the documents, and a scathing non-response from the Chen family lawyers." "What did they say?" "That the allegations are baseless, defamatory, and clearly motivated by financial gain. That they're pursuing legal action against everyone involved. The usual." "How's the story look?" "Devastating. If even half of what we documented is true, and I believe it is, this is going to destroy James Chen's reputation. Probably Victor's, too." Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. hope, maybe. Or just the relief of finally striking back. Thank you, Jennifer. Don't thank me yet. This is going to start a war. I know. Are you ready for it? Adrian looked at Emily, who was sitting on his couch with Marcus, reading him a book about dragons. She was smiling, actually smiling. For the first time in weeks, she looked like she wasn't carrying the weight of the world. Yeah, Adrian said. I'm ready. The story hit at 6 a.m. the next morning. Adrian's phone started ringing immediately. His publicist, his lawyer, his business partners, journalists wanting comments. He ignored all of them and read the article. It was perfect. Thorough, factual, damning. Jennifer had laid out everything. The coerced engagement, the years of stalking, the pattern of abusive behavior, the fraudulent contracts. She'd interviewed the other women who'd dated James, gotten them to describe his need for control, his treatment of women as possessions. And she'd included Thomas Hart's documents, complete with legal analysis showing that the marriage contract had been null from the beginning. By noon, it was everywhere. CNN, MSN, BC, Fox News. Social media was on fire. The hashtag freed from Chen was trending. Women's rights groups were holding press conferences. Legal experts were debating coercion and contract law. And the Chens were silent. They're regrouping, Vincent said, figuring out their response. This is the calm before the storm. The storm hit at 3 p.m. Adrian's lawyer called, his voice tight. They just filed a $100 million defamation lawsuit against you, Emily, Thomas Hart, and the New York Times. They're alleging conspiracy to damage their reputation and business interests. Let them file. We have the truth. Adrian, $100 million. Even if we win, the legal fees alone. I don't care about the money. Fight it. An hour later, Adrian's board called an emergency meeting. Several members wanted him to step down as CEO of Aurelius until the lawsuit was resolved. Said the negative publicity was damaging the brand. Adrian told them where they could put their concerns. 2 board members resigned immediately. Adrian didn't blink. By evening, the business news networks were running stories about Adrian Vale, the billionaire restaurateur who was sacrificing his empire for a woman. Some painted him as a hero, others as a fool. The debate raged. Emily watched it all with growing horror. You're losing everything, she said. Your business partners, your board, your reputation. I'm losing people who aren't worth keeping. Adrian, Emily, look at me. He took her hands. I've spent 3 years building walls around myself, focusing on money and success and control because those were the only things that made sense after Sarah died. And I was dying inside. Slowly, quietly, becoming someone Marcus barely recognized. He squeezed her hands. You changed that. You reminded me what it feels like to care about something real. So no, I'm not losing everything. I'm losing the things that don't matter and keeping the things that do. What if we don't win? Then we lose fighting, but at least we fought. The response from James Chen came that night. Not a phone call, not a legal filing, something worse. Vincent called at 11 p.m., his voice urgent. Turn on the news, now! Adrian flipped to CNN. James Chen was giving a press conference, standing in front of his father's estate, looking devastated and heartbroken. Emily Hart and I were in love, James said, his voice breaking perfectly. We were engaged, planning our future together, but her family's financial problems put pressure on our relationship. When she couldn't handle the stress, she ran. He paused, seemed to gather himself. I've spent 12 years looking for her, not to force her into anything, but to make sure she was safe, to tell her I still loved her, that I'd forgiven her. Emily made a choking sound. James continued. Now I learned she's been hiding behind a billionaire, allowing him to paint me as some kind of monster, allowing him to fabricate evidence and manipulate the media for his own purposes. He looked directly at the camera. Emily, if you're watching this, I still love you. Come home. Please. Let me take care of you the way I always wanted to. The performance was flawless, sympathetic, believable. He's good, Vincent muttered. He's a liar, Emily said. Doesn't matter. Half the country is going to believe him. And Vincent was right. By morning, public opinion was split. Some people saw James as a controlling abuser. Others saw him as a heartbroken man being victimized by a gold digger and her billionaire boyfriend. The narrative was fracturing. Adrian's lawyer called with worse news. The judge assigned to the defamation case is known for favoring powerful defendants. The Chens probably forum shopped until they got him. This is going to be an uphill battle. How uphill? Mount Everest uphill. They're going to drag this out for years, bleed you dry with legal fees, and probably win. Adrian hung up and stared at his reflection in the window. For the first time since this started, he felt the doubt creeping in. Maybe Emily had been right. Maybe some battles couldn't be won. Maybe he'd just made everything worse. Then Marcus appeared in the doorway, holding his dragon book.
Dad? Miss Emily is crying in the bathroom. I think she needs you. Adrian found her sitting on the floor of the guest bathroom, her arms wrapped around her knees, shaking. He sat down beside her and pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry, she sobbed. So sorry. I should never have let you do this. Should never have... Stop. You're losing everything because of me. I'm fighting for something that matters. There's a difference. We're going to lose.
James is too powerful, has too many connections. Maybe. But Emily, look at what we've already done. We exposed him. The whole world knows his story now, even if half of them don't believe it. Half of them do. We planted doubt. We made people question him. That's not nothing. It's not enough. Maybe not, but it's a start. Adrian tilted her face up to look at him. And we're not done fighting. What else can we do? We've played every card we have. Adrian thought about the chess games he used to play with Sarah, about how sometimes the winning move wasn't the obvious one. Sometimes you had to sacrifice pieces to protect your king, and then it hit him. We give James what he wants, Adrian said slowly. Emily's eyes widened. What? Not you, never you. But we give him something he values just as much. Public vindication, the appearance of winning. I don't understand. Adrian stood up, his mind racing. James doesn't actually want you. He wants to not look weak, to not look like he lost, to save face in front of his father and his business associates. He started pacing. So we give him an exit, a way to walk away that makes him look magnanimous instead of defeated. How? We offer him a deal. We drop the lawsuit, issue a joint statement saying it was all a misunderstanding, and Emily publicly thanks him for releasing her from their engagement with grace and understanding. Emily stared at him. That's a lie. He'll never agree to admit the engagement is over. He will if the alternative is worse. If we threaten to release more evidence, more victims, more proof of his abuse. Adrian pulled out his phone, calling Vincent. Can you find more women? More evidence against James? Probably. Why? Because we're going to bury him, unless he walks away voluntarily. Vincent was quiet for a moment. That's extortion. That's negotiation.
You sure about this?
Adrian looked at Emily, at this woman who'd been running for 12 years, who deserved peace more than anyone he'd ever met. Yes. The offer was delivered through lawyers the next morning. Drop the defamation suit, sign documents releasing Emily from any claim of engagement or marriage. Issue a joint statement framing the split as mutual and amicable. Or face the release of testimony from 7 more women who dated James Chen and had similar stories of control and abuse. Victor Chen's lawyers called it blackmail. Adrian's lawyers called it a settlement negotiation. The standoff lasted 3 days. During those 3 days, Adrian barely slept. He kept waiting for the Chens to refuse, to escalate, to make good on their threats. Kept expecting armed men to break down his door or lawsuits to multiply or his business to collapse. Instead, there was silence. On the 4th day, the Chen's lawyer called. My clients agree to your terms, with one addition. What addition? Victor Chen wants a face-to-face meeting with Emily Hart. One conversation, private, after which, if she still wants the engagement terminated, he'll sign the documents. Adrian's blood ran cold. No, absolutely not. Then there's no deal. Emily is not meeting with Victor Chen alone. Not alone. You can be there. One room, one conversation, then it's over. Adrian looked at Emily, who'd been listening on speaker. She was pale, but her jaw was set. I'll do it, she said. Emily, I'll do it. If it ends this, I'll do it. The meeting was set for the following evening. Neutral ground again, a law office in downtown Manhattan. Victor Chen would be there with his lawyers. Emily and Adrian would be there with theirs. Adrian hired extra security anyway. Reese and his full team stationed outside the building, armed and ready. If anything goes wrong, Adrian told Reese, you get Emily out, whatever it takes. Copy that. Victor Chen was shorter than Adrian expected. Maybe 5'8", slender, with white hair and the kind of face that probably smiled easily in different circumstances. He looked like somebody's grandfather. Harmless. Adrian knew better. They sat across from each other in a conference room that smelled like leather and old wood. Emily sat beside Adrian, her hands folded in her lap, her expression carefully neutral. Victor studied her for a long moment. You've caused me a great deal of trouble, he said finally. His English was perfect, his accent barely noticeable. You tried to sell me to your son like property, Emily replied. I'd say we're even. Victor's expression didn't change. Your father owed me money. I offered him a solution that would have benefited both our families. You would have wanted for nothing, had wealth, status, security. I would have been a prisoner. You would have been a wife. Those aren't the same thing. Victor leaned back in his chair. James tells me you've been working as a waitress, hiding in cheap apartments, running from city to city like a criminal. Is that the freedom you chose? Is it better than what I offered? Emily's hands tightened in her lap, but her voice stayed steady. Yes, because it was my choice, my life, not something that was sold for $3 million. Your father's debt was not mine to pay. Victor was quiet for a moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. You're right. It wasn't. He pulled out a document from his briefcase. This is the termination agreement. It releases you from any obligation to my family, declares the engagement contract null and void, prevents any future claims. Emily reached for it, but Victor held it back. Before I sign this, I want you to understand something. My son has spent 12 years looking for you. 12 years of resources, time, money. Not because he loved you, I'm not naive enough to believe that, but because you represented something he couldn't control, something that got away. Victor's eyes were cold now. I taught him that. That power means never letting anything slip through your fingers. That's my fault, and I'm sorry for it. Emily stared at him. You're apologizing? I'm acknowledging reality. James has become what I made him, and you paid the price for that. Victor slid the document across the table. So take your freedom, Emily Hart. Take it and never look back. But understand that I'm giving it to you not out of kindness, but because continuing this fight serves no purpose. You've made my son look weak. You've damaged our reputation. The cost of pursuing you is now greater than the cost of letting you go. That's all this is to you, a cost-benefit analysis. That's all anything is. Emily picked up the pen and signed her name. Then she slid it to Adrian, who signed as witness. Then to Thomas, who did the same. Victor signed last. Then he stood up, gathering his papers. My son will not bother you again, he said. If he does, contact me directly. I'll handle it. Why would you do that? Victor almost smiled. Because I'm 87 years old and I'm tired of cleaning up messes. James will learn to accept loss. Or he won't. Either way, you're no longer his concern. He walked out without another word. Emily sat very still for a long moment. Then she started shaking. Adrian pulled her into his arms. It's over. It's really over. Is it? Emily's voice was muffled against his chest. Can I really just stop running? Yes. How do you know? Because Victor Chen doesn't make empty promises. He said it's over, which means it's over. Emily pulled back, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to do this, how to stay in one place, how to build a life. Then we'll figure it out together. Thomas stood up, smiling. Welcome home, Emily. The joint statement was released the next morning. It was bland, corporate, carefully worded to make everyone look reasonable. The engagement had been a mistake. Both parties wished each other well. No hard feelings. The media lost interest within a week. The lawsuits were dropped. The board members who'd resigned from Aurelius were quietly replaced. Life returned to something resembling normal, except nothing was normal anymore. Emily moved into Adrian's building officially. Not the guest suite, a larger apartment on the same floor, with windows overlooking Central Park and space enough for a real life. Adrian paid for it and wouldn't hear arguments. Consider it back pay for all the years you should have been living like a human being instead of a ghost, he said. Emily started working at Aurelius full-time, not as a waitress, but as a director of international operations. She spoke 4 languages, understood fine dining better than anyone Adrian had ever met, and had a gift for training staff that transformed the entire operation. Within 3 months, Aurelius had a waiting list 6 months long. Within 6 months, they'd opened a second location in Los Angeles that made back its investment in the first year. And Emily stopped looking over her shoulder. It didn't happen all at once. Some mornings, she still woke up disoriented, reaching for the go bag that was no longer beside her bed. Some nights, she still startled at unexpected sounds. But slowly, day by day, she started to relax. Started to trust that she wasn't going to have to run. Started to believe she could stay. Marcus helped. The boy had attached himself to Emily with the kind of fierce devotion that only 8-year-olds could manage. He wanted her at every dinner, every bedtime, every important moment. And Emily, who'd spent 12 years avoiding attachments, found she didn't mind. He talks about you constantly, Adrian told her one evening. They were in his apartment, Marcus asleep in his room, the city lights sparkling below. You and dragons, that's 90% of his vocabulary now. Emily smiled. He's a good kid. He loves you. I love him too. Adrian moved closer. And me? Emily looked up at him, and for the first time in 12 years, she let herself be completely honest. Yes, I love you too. Adrian kissed her then, and it felt different from all the other times. Not desperate, not scared, just real. Move in with me, he said when they broke apart. I live in the same building. I mean here. This apartment, with me and Marcus. Officially. Emily's breath caught. Adrian, I know it's fast. I know you're probably not ready, but I don't care. I want you here. Marcus wants you here. This apartment has been empty for 3 years, and you make it feel like a home again. What if I mess it up? What if I can't do this? Then we'll mess it up together. Adrian took her hands. Emily, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to stay. Emily thought about all the apartments she'd lived in over 12 years. All the cheap studios and temporary sublets and places she'd never decorated because she knew she'd be leaving soon. Thought about what it would mean to actually stay somewhere, to put pictures on the walls and books on the shelves, and trust that she'd still be there next month, next year, next decade. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll stay. Adrian pulled her into his arms, and Emily let herself believe finally that this was real. That she wasn't going to wake up and have to run. That she'd found something worth staying for. Marcus was ecstatic when they told him. Does this mean Miss Emily is going to be here all the time? He asked. If that's okay with you, Emily said. It's very okay. Marcus thought for a moment. Are you going to marry my dad? Emily and Adrian looked at each other. Maybe someday, Adrian said carefully. If Emily wants to. Do you want to? Marcus asked Emily directly. Emily crouched down to the boy's level. I spent a long time being scared of marriage, because the first time someone tried to make me get married, it was for all the wrong reasons. But your dad, she glanced up at Adrian, your dad makes me think maybe I was scared of the wrong thing. So yes? So maybe yes. Someday. Marcus seemed satisfied with this answer. Okay, but can we get a dog too? They got the dog 3 weeks later. A rescue mutt that Marcus named Dragon, despite looking nothing like one. The animal was a disaster, chewed furniture, knocked over plants, barked at nothing. But Marcus loved it, and watching her son laugh as he played with the dog made Emily's chest ache in a good way. Her son. When had she started thinking of Marcus as hers? Probably around the same time she'd stopped flinching every time someone knocked on the door. Thomas visited for Thanksgiving. He and Marcus bonded over a shared love of terrible puns and chess. Emily watched her grandfather teach her almost son the game she'd learned at the same age and felt something settle inside her. This was family. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. You're happy, Thomas said one evening when it was just the two of them. I am, Good. You deserve it. Do I? Emily, you survived 12 years of hell. You stayed kind despite everything, stayed honest, stayed yourself. He squeezed her hand. Yeah, you deserve it. Adrian proposed on New Year's Eve, and not at a restaurant, not in public, just the three of them, Adrian, Emily, and Marcus, on Adrian's balcony, watching fireworks explode over the city. I had a whole speech planned, Adrian said, pulling out a ring, about how you changed my life, how you brought light back into this apartment, how Marcus smiles again because of you. But I think you already know all that. I do, Emily said, her throat tight. So I'm just going to ask, will you marry me? For real this time. Because you want to. Not because anyone's forcing you or buying you or trying to own you. Just because we love each other and we want to build a life together. Emily looked at the ring, simple, elegant, perfect. Looked at Adrian, this man who'd risked everything to fight for her. Looked at Marcus, who was watching with wide, hopeful eyes. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Marcus cheered. Adrian slipped the ring on her finger, and as fireworks burst overhead, painting the sky in colors that rivaled the city lights, Emily Hart finally understood what freedom felt like. Not running, not hiding, not constantly looking over her shoulder, just staying, choosing to stay, choosing to build something permanent with people who saw her scars and loved her anyway. They got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, close friends only. Thomas walked Emily down the aisle. Marcus was the ring bearer and took his job very seriously. The dog attended and only caused 2 minor disasters. Standing at the altar, watching Emily walk toward him in a simple white dress with her hair down and her eyes bright, Adrian thought about Sarah, about how she would have loved this, how she would have loved Emily, how she would have told him to stop overthinking and just be happy. So he did. Emily's vows were short. I spent 12 years running, hiding, being afraid. You taught me how to stand still, how to fight, how to trust that staying could be just as brave as leaving. So I'm staying for as long as you'll have me. Adrian's vows were shorter. I was lost. You found me. Thank you. The reception was at Aurelius, of course. The staff had outdone themselves. The food was perfect. The wine flowed. And when Adrian and Emily had their first dance, Marcus joined in halfway through, making it a family dance that left none of them with dry eyes. Richard gave a toast. To the boss who scared us all, and the woman who scared him right back. May you both continue terrifying each other for many years to come. Everyone laughed. Adrian kissed his wife. Emily kissed him back. And somewhere in Hong Kong, James Chen saw the wedding photos on social media and finally accepted that Emily Hart was never coming back. The business thrived. Adrian expanded Aurelius to 5 cities. Emily took over operations and made them more profitable than Adrian had ever managed alone. They traveled together, to Paris, to Tokyo, to Hong Kong even, just to prove she could. Marcus came with them, soaking up languages and culture and growing into a bright, confident kid who still loved dragons but also loved about 1,000 other things. They bought a house in Connecticut for weekends. Got another dog because one apparently wasn't enough. Hosted Christmas for Thomas every year until he passed away peacefully at 91, holding Emily's hand. And Emily never ran again. She built a life instead. Put down roots, made friends, decorated her home, planted a garden, did all the normal, boring, beautiful things she'd thought she'd never have. 5 years after the wedding, on a quiet Tuesday morning, Emily woke up beside Adrian and realized something. She was happy. Not pretending to be happy. Not happy despite her past. Just happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Adrian stirred beside her. You're staring at me. I am. Why? Because I love you and because you saved my life. Adrian pulled her close. Pretty sure you saved mine first. Want to call it even? Not a chance. I'm keeping score. And I'm winning. Emily laughed. Everything's a competition with you. Everything's worth winning if you're involved. They lay there in comfortable silence, the morning sun painting gold across the sheets, the sounds of the city waking up below them. Marcus was still asleep down the hall. The dogs were probably destroying something in the kitchen. Life was messy and imperfect and absolutely nothing like Emily had imagined when she'd first run 12 years ago. It was better. Adrian? she said quietly. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For not letting me disappear. Adrian kissed her forehead. Best decision I ever made. And it was true. All of it. The fight, the risk, the choice to stand his ground instead of letting Emily slip away into the shadows. Best decision he'd ever made. Because Emily Hart hadn't just changed his life. She'd given him one worth living again. Given Marcus a mother who understood what it felt like to be scared and chose to be brave anyway. Given them both the gift of her presence, her strength, her stubborn refusal to stay broken. She'd been worth every dollar, every fight, every sleepless night. Worth everything. And as morning light filled their bedroom and life continued its beautiful, messy march forward, Adrian and Emily did what they'd learned to do best. They stayed, together, exactly where they belonged.